Hello, my Minnow friends. Welcome back to Menopause University. This is the YouTube channel that is truly a classroom. There are a lot of other educational YouTube channels, but I don't know of any that are true classrooms where the teacher implores you to watch all the videos in order and gives you quiz questions. So this is video number 358. It is the third video in our unit on breast cancer. In video number 356, I taught you about breast anatomy, the basic breast anatomy. In video number 357, I taught you about the anatomical evolution of your breasts during the various hormonal phases of your life. And now you're ready to learn about the precise roles of the individual hormones involved in those anatomical changes. Do you see how one video builds on the last? So, while all of chapter 30 is on breast cancer in both editions of my book, the first and the second, you will not find nearly the detail that I give you in this or any of the breast cancer videos. This is the place to get the best understanding ever. As I've taught you in so many of these videos on menopause, your hormones have well-defined roles. Each hormone has a job description. Knowing precisely what each hormone does or does not do helps you make sense of what you experience at any particular time. So let's address each hormone that is involved with the activity of your breasts. And let's make one of our nifty little charts so that we can keep them all straight as we move through this unit on breast cancer. So first I'll give you a list of the hormones that pertain to your breasts. They are estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, and oxytocin. As usual, the most logical way to address this is chronologically, just as you encounter the various hormonal phases of your life. So our chart will reflect that. Here is the chart we will fill in as we go along. What you see is 4 columns designated across the top row for our 4 breast hormones: estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, and oxytocin. In the first column, you see the 5 hormonal phases your breasts endure: puberty, menstrual cycles, pregnancy, breastfeeding, and menopause. And in the second column, you see menstrual cycles subdivided into early, mid, and late portions of each cycle. And the late portion of each cycle is the premenstrual time when you can have PMS. With this as our framework, let's address each hormone in turn. First is estrogen. One of the first lessons I taught you is that estrogen is your female hormone. And you know, I'm in a habit, good or bad, of using the 3 bears from Goldilocks and the 3 Bears to teach you about the 3 sex hormones. And that's because each of the sex hormones belongs to only one of the 3 bears. Testosterone is Papa Bear's hormone. Testosterone is all about Papa Bear. Estrogen is Mama Bear's hormone. And progesterone is Baby Bear's hormone. That just helps you keep them all straight. So estrogen is your hormone. It's what makes you Mama Bear. Well, if estrogen is your hormone, and you're the only member of the 3 Bears family who has breasts, how would you expect estrogen to function with regard to your breasts? This helps you make sense of the functions of each of these hormones. Well, first, reflect on the fact that you didn't have breasts before puberty. And that's because your estrogen is dormant or sleeping until you hit puberty. But when puberty arrives, that estrogen is unleashed and it starts acting on your breasts. So you get flooded with estrogen. And what does it do? It's the major hormone that causes your breasts to grow. This makes perfect sense. Estrogen is the female hormone, and females have breasts. So estrogen causes your breasts to grow in the first place. But estrogen only prepares your breasts to function as an attractive sex symbol. So it makes them firm and perky, enabling you to find a male suitor. It's as if estrogen makes them stand up to get noticed. Now, last week you learned that puberty is a time when the fibrous tissue of your breasts dominates. And that's because estrogen stimulates the fiber in your breasts to grow. Estrogen is all about you. Its goal is to turn you and your breasts into a successful, male-attracting female. So here's estrogen's role during puberty on our chart. Now, what about estrogen's effect on your breasts during your menstrual cycles? Well, your menstrual cycles serve only one purpose. They enable you to get pregnant. So while you may not have ever really thought about your cycles being merely a part of the goal of pregnancy, that's actually all they are. So some aspects of your menstrual cycle begin preparing your body for the possibility of pregnancy, even though you aren't already pregnant. You saw this same thing in our lessons pertaining to the roles of estrogen and progesterone on your uterus. When it comes to your uterus, estrogen is the hormone that initiates thickening of the lining in your uterus so that it can function as a baby carriage if you get pregnant. Well, in the same way that estrogen focused on preparing your uterus for the possibility of pregnancy, estrogen also focuses on preparing your breasts for the possibility of pregnancy. So during your menstrual cycles, estrogen prepares your breasts for pregnancy and eventual breastfeeding. And it does so by causing the ductal portion of the glands in your breasts to grow. So, that's this portion down here, this stalk of the broccoli. Now, that's not enough all by itself to prepare your breasts for pregnancy and breastfeeding. But you saw that same phenomenon with regard to estrogen's action on your uterus. It can't support a pregnancy. But estrogen is like a primer. It lays the basic foundation for pregnancy to occur, even though it alone cannot perform the necessary duties of supporting a pregnancy or preparing your breasts for breastfeeding. So estrogen merely makes the ductal portion of your breast glands grow. And estrogen rises in the early part of your menstrual cycles. So that's when it acts on your breasts. So let's add that to our chart. Next, we have the actions of estrogen during pregnancy. Now, pregnancy is a whole different focus. It's not on you anymore. It's on the baby. So what do you suppose the role of estrogen is on your breasts during pregnancy? It has no role. Once you're pregnant, the focus turns to the baby, and that's the job of progesterone. Estrogen merely enhances the functions of these other breast hormones. It plays sort of a helper role. So we're going to leave the cell for estrogen during pregnancy blank. And next is breastfeeding. And again, since breastfeeding is all about the baby, estrogen has a very minor role. It assists the function of the other breast hormones, but does little on its own. And finally, we have menopause. Now, you already know that menopause is loss of your estrogen. So if estrogen is the hormone that served to make your breasts high in the fiber content, what do you expect to happen when you lose your estrogen? Ah, you're starting to connect the dots quite well. That firm, fibrous tissue that made your breasts perky and attractive during puberty is now going to decrease or regress. So your breasts become somewhat soft and squishy. Perfectly logical, isn't it? And what else did estrogen do? It caused growth of your breast ducts. So what's the logical consequence of estrogen loss on your breast ducts? Shrinkage! And that's precisely what your breast ducts do at menopause. They shrink. The duct was long like this before estrogen loss, but it's short like this after estrogen loss. So here's the completed estrogen column on our chart. So estrogen functions in causing the fibrous tissue of your breasts to grow at puberty and regress at menopause. Other than that, it functions in making the ducts grow. So now let's turn our attention to progesterone. And our first hormonal phase is puberty. So progesterone and puberty. Well, progesterone belongs to baby bear. So even though we're addressing puberty, the very first thing you should think about when you hear the word progesterone is how it contributes to pregnancy. And even as early as puberty, progesterone is going to function in a way that focuses on pregnancy. It's going to turn your breasts into a milk-producing organ for a baby. This means that the actions of progesterone at the time of puberty are going to be things that pertain to pregnancy or the baby. And the part of your breast that benefits the baby is the glands again. So, progesterone causes development of this lobular portion of the gland. That's this part here. It's the structure that produces the milk for your baby. And it starts developing as early as puberty in anticipation of pregnancy in the future. Here that is on our chart. After that, you have your monthly menstrual cycles. Progesterone increases at ovulation, and it acts on your breast tissue to further develop the lobules, this part here, and make it more developed. This lobular development involves fluid retention. That's why you have swollen, tender breasts just before your period starts. These breast symptoms are a common aspect of premenstrual syndrome, or PMS. So progesterone brings your breasts as close as they can be to being a milk-producing gland before you actually get pregnant. Here's our chart again. Next, you get pregnant. This is where progesterone really takes the lead and finishes preparing your breasts for breastfeeding. Most women experience breast tenderness as the very first symptom of pregnancy. And just as PMS is due to progesterone, so is the breast tenderness of early pregnancy. So progesterone makes your nipples dark in color and causes your breasts to swell. The breast swelling is due to the fact that progesterone causes the milk lobules to grow massively. It does this by forming many more lobules than you had before you became pregnant. By the 5th or 6th month of pregnancy, your breasts are fully capable of producing milk, but progesterone blocks actual milk production until delivery. Isn't it remarkable that progesterone can do all these things to ensure that there's milk for the baby when the baby arrives. So it makes it possible for you to feed the baby if it's born prematurely, but it prohibits you from actually using the milk before the baby is actually born. Here's progesterone during pregnancy on our chart. Now, after the baby is born, it's time to breastfeed. So what does progesterone do then? Well, what did progesterone do to your uterine lining if you didn't get pregnant? It disappeared. It said, "No baby, I'm out of here." It only stayed around long enough to prepare your uterus for pregnancy. When you got pregnant, it stayed around to prepare your breasts to feed the baby. But once the baby is born, what's progesterone's job on your breasts? It doesn't have one, so it disappears. Your progesterone levels drop, and they have no role in anything after the baby's born. Do you see how everything makes perfect sense? No pregnancy, no progesterone. Progesterone is all about the pregnancy. That's why GEST, G-E-S-T, is part of its name. GEST is for gestation. And finally, you reach menopause. And what's the first hormone to disappear when you start the transition into menopause? Progesterone. It's the hormone that disappears to cause perimenopause. Perimenopause. Do you remember this graph I made long ago? It's my Play-Doh graph of your sex hormones during pre, peri, and post-menopause. And you can see that progesterone disappears at least a couple of years before estrogen disappears. The progesterone is the multicolored one, and it's gone a couple of years before the pink one disappears. Well, what's the consequence of progesterone loss? It's going to be the opposite of progesterone stimulation. So your lobules are going to shrink. The lobule was big like this before progesterone loss, and it's smaller like this after progesterone loss. So here's the final results on our chart for the progesterone column. So progesterones cause lobular or glandular growth and development. That's all. Now it's time to talk about a hormone I haven't ever mentioned before. It's prolactin. And the reason I've never mentioned it before is because it's a hormone that is involved in breastfeeding. And since this education centers around menopause and not breastfeeding, I've had no reason to discuss it. So this is your first lesson on it. Based on its very name, you can surmise that prolactin has something to do with lactation. Lactation is the process of milk production by your breasts. Pro means in support of. So prolactin is the hormone in support of milk production by your breasts. Once delivery occurs and the baby needs feeding, prolactin takes control of your breasts. Prolactin levels are actually higher during pregnancy than they are at the time of delivery. But prolactin levels vary over a wide range. They rise in response to nipple stimulation or nursing. So your breasts have prolactin surges as necessary once the baby is born. They are highest in the first week after delivery at 100 to 200 nanograms per milliliter. And then they range between 25 and about 200 nanograms per milliliter in the second to fourth weeks after delivery. And after that, they hover between 20 to 40 nanograms per milliliter. So prolactin is all about breastfeeding. Without it, you cannot breastfeed, and it makes your breast lobules get really, really, really huge. So this is where prolactin comes in. Big lobules and milk production. There's no place for it at all during puberty, menstrual cycles, or menopause. It comes on the scene only when it's time to breastfeed. It's there before, but it doesn't act before. So here's prolactin on our breast hormone chart. So prolactin's only job is to produce breast milk. And finally, we have oxytocin. Now you've heard me talk about this hormone in the past, at which time I referred to it as the bonding hormone. It's the glue. It makes you fall in love with your man and your children. Well, it has a role in your breasts too. You've probably even heard people use the term bonding to describe forming a connection between mother and child after delivery. And that term is invariably used in conjunction with breastfeeding. In fact, some people view breastfeeding as the definition of bonding. So this is yet another hormone that acts on your breasts. And its actions on your breasts are confined to the postpartum breastfeeding portion of your life. Oxytocin causes the supporting tissue around your milk glands to contract. This is the one that causes the actual contractions. And those contractions result in the release of milk into the ducts so that the baby can draw the milk into its mouth by suckling. So oxytocin causes milk release as opposed to production. The word bonding is appropriate because release of oxytocin becomes a conditioned response. A conditioned response is a response that occurs automatically due to an association with some other action. Oxytocin makes your breasts secrete milk at the mere thought of your baby, sight of your baby, or cry of your baby. So oxytocin completes our chart and the list of breast hormones. Like prolactin, there's no place for oxytocin during puberty, menstrual cycles, or menopause. It comes on the scene only during breastfeeding. So oxytocin completes our chart, and here's our chart again. So you see it only functions in release of milk from your breasts. So estrogen and progesterone dominate and run the show during puberty and your menstrual cycles, while prolactin and oxytocin dominate and run the show during pregnancy and breastfeeding. So what we have going on in our breasts then is a hormone cycle, and it looks like this. First, there's estrogen, which is here, and it just causes the duct part to grow. Then there's progesterone here, which causes lobule growth and development. Then there's prolactin, which causes milk production. And last, there's oxytocin, which causes milk release. So you see all these changes occurring as a cycle. What you have is a set of 4 breast hormones that act on your breast over the course of your lifetime. Each one has a specific role, at least one specific role. And together they create a cycle of changes in your breast. How much of that cycle your breast actually experiences depends on whether or not you ever become pregnant, whether or not you ever bring a pregnancy to term, and whether or not you ever breastfeed. Your breasts only complete the entire cycle if you get pregnant and breastfeed. And this concept of viewing these hormonal changes as a part of a complete cycle is pertinent to our topic on breast cancer. So this is why I took you through each hormone and the actions of each on your breast. This will set the stage for future videos in this unit. And if you want the little chart I made you, you can find it in the link in the description box underneath the screen, or you can go to menopausetailor.me. So that's the end of our class today. I hope you enjoy learning this as much as I enjoy teaching it. If you need me to help you personally with anything at all, please schedule a consultation with me at menopausetailor.me. And if you want to receive my bi-weekly newsletter, sign up here. If you want to be an official student at Menopause University, subscribe here. And if you want to follow me on social media, go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Stories.